They set sail to chase adventure and love, but when the ocean turned ruthless, their dream became a brutal fight for survival. This is the story of what really happens when you become lost and adrift in the endless blue sea. This is the true life story of the movie, Adrift. It is a story of passion, resilience, and a race against nature you can never forget.
But I wouldn't have us to remember. I wouldn't trade this for anything.
As the movie opens, a young woman named Tammy awakens inside a partially submerged yacht, battered and disoriented. Blood trickles from a wound on her forehead and the vessel shows signs of catastrophic damage, seemingly caused by a powerful hurricane. Tammy immediately starts to panic as she scrambles to find her fiancé, Richard, but he is nowhere in sight. Alone and adrift in the vast Pacific Ocean, Tammy climbs to the deck, surrounded only by endless water and silence. The scene then goes 5 months earlier, where Tammy is seen sailing toward Tahiti, a French island in the South Pacific. Upon arrival, she is asked about her occupation and reasons for visiting. With no formal job and driven only by her wanderlust, Tammy could only offer an awkward smile. She soon finds temporary work at the island's port, bonding with a local worker named Deb. Originally from California, Tammy had grown weary of her mundane office life and decided to seek adventure across the world. One day, their routine is interrupted by the arrival of a sleek yacht. The man on board playfully exchanges words with the women before introducing himself as Richard. While Deb remains indifferent, Tammy is visibly intrigued by him. Later, Tammy approaches Richard as he works on his sailboat. Their casual chat quickly turns into a dinner invitation. That night, aboard Richard's boat, they grow closer as they share stories and dreams. Richard confesses his passion for sailing, despite the solitude and sacrifice it demands. Tammy also tells him that she is equally drawn to the sea, and she eagerly accepts his offer to sail with him. The next day, Richard allows her to steer the yacht, despite her inexperience. Tammy picks up the basics quickly, and shows her natural intuition for life at sea. Together, they explore the open ocean, forming a deep bond along the way. During one outing, Tammy leads Richard to a secluded waterfall hidden in the island's forest. To his surprise, she dives in playfully, prompting Richard to jump in after her, thinking she's in danger. He soon realizes it was a harmless prank. In another moment, the two enjoy time on a quiet beach. Richard captures the moment with his Polaroid camera, snapping a photo of Tammy to commemorate their growing romance. Back in the present, Tammy fights to survive in the sea. She tries to contact marine rescue using the boat's radio, but it's completely non-functional. Stranded and injured, she resorts to makeshift repairs, using duct tape to seal the cracks on the boat. With little food and no directions, Tammy faces the vast ocean alone, as she clings to hope and her memories of the life she once had with Richard. Her journey has shifted from a dreamlike escape to a brutal test of endurance, where survival has become her only focus. As Tammy lies in despair on the shattered sailboat, her mind is on the edge. Although the storm has passed, there seems to be no hope for her survival. Just as she begins to lose hope, she remembers that she can't find the lifeboat on deck. That realization sparks a crucial hope that Richard might still be alive. Suddenly driven by determination, Tammy begins to restore the boat with the limited resources at hand. Using a manual pump, she slowly removes the seawater flooding the cabin. She then repositions the sail using makeshift repairs and tools, stabilizing the vessel enough to harness the wind. The boat begins to move again, and this offers her some hope. As she scans the horizon through a pair of binoculars, Tammy finally spots the lifeboat drifting far in the distance. Wasting no time, she secures a rope to herself and jumps into the water, swimming with all her strength. When she reaches the small raft, she finds Richard clinging to life, weak but still breathing. So, Tammy pulls him back to the main boat and carefully guides him aboard. Then she tends to his wounds and assures him that they'll survive. The story then shifts into a flashback. Tammy and Richard are seen walking together as he tells her about a local flower called the frangipani, explaining its cultural symbolism. Later, during a quiet evening, Tammy opens up about her troubled childhood. She was raised by her grandparents after her young mother abandoned her, and that her desire to travel stems from a longing to escape her painful past. As music plays nearby, she invites Richard to dance. They join a crowd of couples on the dance floor, moving in harmony under the stars. There, Richard asks Tammy if she'd like to sail the world with him, and she agrees without hesitation. The next day, they shop for groceries and make plans for their next destination. On their way out, they encounter Richard's old friends, Christine and Peter. The old couple invites them for dinner, and there, Peter presents them with a proposal to help sail their yacht back to California in exchange for $10,000 and a first-class return flight. Though it's a generous offer, Tammy is visibly uncomfortable with it. That evening, as they review their route, she tells Richard she doesn't want to return to the life she had deliberately left behind. Richard understands her, so he promises to turn the offer down. Back in the present, Richard lies motionless in the cabin, unable to help Tammy with anything due to his injuries. Meanwhile, Tammy, who has become exhausted, is still determined to take full control of their survival. After assessing their situation, she makes a discovery that the storm has pushed them 1,500 miles off course. With the boat heavily damaged and their supplies dwindling fast, the journey back to safety seems nearly impossible now. So, Tammy braces herself for the harsh reality that their struggle has only just begun. With the reality of the limited options, Richard insists that landfall isn't necessary. He estimates that reaching San Diego would take around 25 days. However, Tammy analyzes the wind patterns and realizes they could reach Hawaii faster if they changed course. The decision carries significant risk. If they miss the islands, the next landmass is Japan, thousands of miles away. But without easier choice, they decide to take the gamble and head toward Hawaii. Then, once more in a flashback, the couple is seen relaxing aboard Peter's luxurious yacht, enjoying drinks and casual conversation. Peter tells them that Christine's father has been hospitalized, and that is why the two had to return to London the following day. Later on, during a private discussion, Richard explains to Tammy that sailing their boat back to California for Peter would earn them enough money to finance a full year of travel together. Acknowledging the long-term benefit of the offer, Tammy ultimately agrees to the plan. The next day, she writes a letter to her mother, informing her of her unexpected return to the US. Back in the present, the couple is already battling the early stages of thirst and hunger. Tammy scavenges what little food and water remain on the damaged vessel, but it's clear the supplies won't last long. After 5 days adrift, they discover that the boat has veered off course once more. While most systems appear stable, the vessel is still severely compromised. Suspecting there is an issue with the rudder, Tammy dives into the ocean. That was when she discovered that the sail had been caught underneath the hull and was dragging their progress. Summoning every ounce of her strength, she works tirelessly to free it until she eventually succeeds. Days later, Tammy finds a bottle of sunscreen among the debris and applies it to her sunburnt skin. She checks on Richard's condition, but his wounds are worsening. With food nearly gone, Richard concludes that fishing is their only option for survival. But Tammy, who is a vegan, is initially reluctant to kill any sea creatures. But as reality sets in, she acknowledges the necessity of survival over her personal beliefs. So, she dives into the water and attempts to catch a fish using a spear. But despite her repeated efforts, she fails to land a single one. She eventually becomes exhausted and overwhelmed, and climbs back into the boat, emotionally defeated. She collapses into Richard's arms as she seeks to find comfort in the only thing she has left, companionship. In an attempt to calm her mind, Tammy begins meditating. Moments later, the skies open and rain begins to fall. For the first time in days, fresh water became available to them and the rain marked a rare stroke of fortune in their ordeal. Tammy immediately bursts into joyous laughter and momentarily forgets the pain and uncertainty that surrounds them. After 18 days stranded in the open sea, with no land in sight, the couple's morale begins to dampen. So, in a desperate attempt to lift their spirits, Tammy searches the lower compartments of the damaged vessel. To her surprise, she discovers an intact bottle of wine. She brings it to the deck, and the two share a quiet moment, using the wine to escape the harshness of their reality, if only for a short time. As the days drag on, Tammy finds an old guitar still in working condition. So she begins to play as she tries to pass the time and bring some semblance of normalcy back into their lives. As Richard watches her, he becomes overwhelmed with guilt. He believes that meeting him has led Tammy into this life-threatening ordeal. But she assures him that she has no regrets and that she will choose instead to embrace the memories they've created, no matter how their journey ends. Once more, we see the time in the past when Richard had picked up the guitar and played a familiar tune, bringing a moment of peace to them. The mood softens as he opens up about his childhood, revealing that his mother took her own life when he was just 7. Though he never understood her reasons, he admits he still talks to her in his mind, searching for the comfort he never received in real life. Tammy listens with empathy, and when she jokingly asks what his mother might think of him now, Richard suddenly proposes for her to marry him. Despite the short time that they had known each other, Tammy accepts, and he slips a handmade ring onto her finger, promising a real one when they reach California. However, back in reality, 29 days have passed since the storm. Then one night, Tammy experiences a vivid hallucination. She suddenly sees a large ship approaching them and she fires a flare gun, desperately trying to signal for rescue. But as the light fades into darkness, she realizes it was only in her mind. The weight of their reality crashes down on her once more, and she breaks down, overwhelmed by hopelessness. Even Richard, who was always optimistic, now seems to struggle to maintain his composure. They were dehydrated and frail, and Richard could barely open his eyes. So, Tammy offers him water and informs him that they are still 700 miles from Hawaii. But despite the odds, she urges him to hold on a little longer. The scene then shifts back to the day their nightmare began. Richard and Tammy were sailing Peter's boat across the Pacific when marine navigators warned them of a massive storm forming 1,000 miles ahead. Believing it might dissipate, they initially kept course, but in the end, they eventually made the decision to alter their direction as a precaution. Despite their efforts, the storm had caught up with them. So, with no space to maneuver, they had no choice but to face it head-on. It has now been 33 days since Tammy last saw land. So, as she lies beside Richard under the open sky, she is haunted by a sense of uneasiness that something terrible is about to happen. Fortunately, the threat materializes only as a mild blizzard, an inconvenience compared to the many dangers they faced. The next morning, Tammy tries to keep Richard alert by recounting her childhood memories. She reveals how, as a child, she would hide in the bathtub to escape the chaos of her parents' arguments, pretending she was somewhere far away. She encourages Richard to do the same, to mentally escape their grim reality. Then, in a flashback, we see what really happened the night of the storm. The couple had been caught in the violent storm as their boat was tossed mercilessly by the waves. As water starts flooding the deck, Tammy clutches the emergency GPS beacon as she desperately attempts to send a distress signal. That was when Richard quickly realizes that the current is too strong and he tells her to take shelter below deck. Just as she tries to climb down, a strong wave slams the vessel. It flings Tammy into the cabin and pushes Richard into the ocean's depths. Tammy later awakens to a painful truth that Richard is gone. He had died during the storm, and all of the moments they'd shared ever since were only hallucinations. They were fragments of her mind clinging to hope, and those visions had kept her going. Still very much determined to survive, Tammy dives into the sea in search of food. For the first time, she is able to capture a fish, and she eats it as she sets aside her vegan beliefs for survival. Suddenly, on day 41, Tammy sees a small bird land on the boat, an unusual sight in the open ocean. Realizing it might be a good sign, Tammy grabs her binoculars and scans the horizon. Then, in the distance, she spots dry land, and more importantly, a ship sailing by. She wastes no time as she fires her flare gun and repeats it again until she sees the ship change course and head straight toward her. Overwhelmed by all she had gone through, she cries tears of relief and sorrow. Moments later, the ship reaches her and pulls her aboard, ending her 41-day ordeal at sea. As days pass, Tammy visits the now-abandoned boat that once carried her and Richard. As she sorts through the remnants of their time together, she finds a flower Richard had once given her. Overcome with emotion, she breaks down and grieves the man she loved and the life they could never finish together. The following day, Tammy returns to the beach where they had first kissed. As she stands alone on the shoreline, she releases the flower and the ring into the sea, a final tribute to the man she had lost. The story ends showing us actual images of Tammy sailing once again alone, but carrying with her the strength, the loss, and the love that had defined her journey all along. And that's the incredible true life story of the movie Adrift. If you enjoyed this recap, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more movie recaps. Thanks for watching.